This is Vaguely Scientific, that's the show we're doing, and that's the show you're listening to. Until you stop, of course, but right now, if you can hear this, you're listening to Vaguely Scientific.
But don't stop.
Don't stop. I am not a generic cleric, but rather very esoteric and possibly chimeric. I am Derek, and I just got a rhyming dictionary. And joining me as always, why, it's him with the hyponym Jim, the Science Jim. Hi, Jim.
Next, we'll get you a thesaurus.
Yeah. I don't know what any of these words mean. Oh, and please welcome back our guest this week, who probably didn't expect that I would introduce him like this. It's Rai, the sci-fi guy. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, my.
Oh, my.
Oh, that was good.
That one wasn't on purpose.
I know, that's what made it work so well. Oh, so this is the show where we answer the most ridiculous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific. But before we do that, it's time for the fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. The Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, or JUICE, is now on its way to the Jovian system to explore Jupiter's icy moons. A big surprise there. But it should learn a lot about the subglacial oceans that are present on Europa, Ganymede, and potentially Callisto. We know Europa has one. Ganymede probably has some liquid water down below. We don't know a whole lot about Callisto's under ice zones, so it'll be interesting. And it's going to be cool because in a few years, we're going to be launching the juices from the European Space Agency. And in a few years, we're going to launch the Europa Clipper, and we're going to be doing science together with the Europeans.
And are we going to be bringing some other beverage other than juice?
Water?
Oh. They have that. They have ice.
Yeah.
The icy moons.
I mean, if you
We're not contributing anything, Jim.
If you melt all the titanium, you could probably drink it.
Well, before we move on to our questions this week, we have some housekeeping that we have to take care of. So it's time for that fan favorite segment, Stuff We Got Wrong and Actually Bothered to Look Up Later. So in our last episode, Jim went on a short rant about how a guy named Hero invented a steam engine. But Jim had said this occurred in the Roman Empire, and Hero was actually Greek-Egyptian, and was commonly known as Hero of Alexandria. However, Hero wasn't actually the first to invent the engine. A Roman engineer named Vitruvius wrote about it in his great engineering manual De Architectura nearly 100 years before Hero came along. So we shouldn't have been holding out for Hero.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm funny. I'm a funny person.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, it's been made famous by Hero, but it was actually written by the Beatles.
Yeah, popularized. It was actually written by the Beatles 100 years before Hero came along.
Yeah. Did I mention that Beatles are time travelers?
Yeah, I would believe it. Yesterday was actually about current events.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have some questions that we should talk about, probably, because that's what the show is. So, does
that's why
anybody
people
want to talk
send
about?
them in.
That is why people send them in. It's like they want us to talk about them. So question 1 this week comes to us from Daniel. How would a virus make you act drunk? And for a bit of elaboration on this question, he cites 2 Star Trek episodes, The Naked Now from The Next Generation and The Naked Time from the original series.
Very naked.
There's a lot of naked. I wonder if that's how everyone's getting sick with this virus. I don't know.
That's how everyone, I guess, acts when they're drunk.
Well,
I guess so.
It's funny because you say that, but as I recall from doing a little bit of research, the virus is spread by skin contact. So,
Oh, interesting.
mhm.
It is during. It is in the original series. Is it? Is it in both? I just watched this episode the other day on my like 12th rewatch of TNG.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's I have nothing to contribute to the science of this, but I do have to contribute for the interpretation of drunkenness in both episodes.
That's fair because
yeah.
I was gonna ask maybe if we wanted to summarize the episodes or something.
Oh boy, yeah, it's the same episode twice.
Okay.
So in TOS, they encounter something, and then they all get this virus which spreads through contact, and it makes them act drunk. It's the one famously where Sulu is running around shirtless with a foil and pretending he's D'Artagnan from the Three Musketeers.
What that's from? Holy cow!
That is what that's from, and that will be my thesis for the show.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The Naked Now is memorable for not many reasons except being the third episode in a relaunch of a fan favorite. Everybody thought TNG was going to fail. Patrick Stewart, I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but allegedly Patrick Stewart was signed on for 6 seasons and he didn't want to be.
Yeah.
But his agent said something about like, take the money up front. This is not going to last 6 seasons. Don't worry. It's probably not going to last 1.
I heard that.
It lasted 7.
I heard Patrick Stewart say that in an interview that he was like, because he's a Shakespearean stage actor,
yes.
right? And he was like, they said, let's do this show about space. And he was like, oh, it'll never last. Make some money and then.
Yeah. So there's some amount of truth. This does not need a correction in the next episode. it's true enough.
I will say there is one other thing that the Next Generation, the Naked Now, I think is that one.
Yes.
It's also very well known for the fact that Data and Tasha Yar go off camera to do things.
I read about
sure
that.
Do.
Can I say this? I unfortunately didn't have time before this recording to watch these episodes, so I had to settle for a summary that I read, and I just want to point out that I had to check multiple times that I was actually reading a summary of an episode of the show and not a fan fiction.
Oh no, it is real. But it was the third episode in a series that people thought was going to fail. So this was really trying to get the fan service in early and be like, yeah, we're Star Trek, I promise.
We're Star Trek,
and
I
it's
promise.
so funny because the way they justify Data is because Data gets the virus and logically everybody would be like, how does an android get, this virus?
Right.
And the reasoning is like, he's like, I have skin, I have pores, I have circuits, I'm fully like, the same as any human physically. Just so they can make him be drunk.
So,
yeah.
Yep, just so they can make him be drunk. That's great.
Which is funny because in future episodes, they love giving Brett Spiner ways to stretch his acting chops.
Yeah.
So they're always like short-circuiting Data's brain and, making him like a fistful of Data's where he's like the entire like no, not what who did Wyatt Earp fight? He's the bad guys in the OK Corral. I forget who they were. If they won, they would be memorable, but they're not. So
yeah. The other thing I thought that was really interesting was that as I was reading about it, it wasn't like a virus. It said it was like a polywater infection or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I say famously. We're not that famous, but several episodes ago, I did an oopsie daisy about polywater and how we thought polywater was this real thing that you could make a bunch of water molecules stick together and turn it into a polymer. And turns out, no, you can't. It's not how that works.
Just messed up. because they didn't clean the equipment.
Yeah, but back in the 60s, we didn't know that. It was brand new, and everyone was like, oh, this is weird. Maybe we should do something with this. And then it seeped its way into Star Trek, and so that's what this is. But I guess that it does behave like a virus, because the polywater molecules can like reproduce inside of a human body and do stuff and make you drunk, I guess.
So that's interesting, and possibly a good segue to sort of the next thing I wanted to say, which is that so the explanation from the show is that the water from the planet has a previously undetected complex chain of molecules that affect humanoids like alcohol. And alcohol affects humans by depressing the centers of their brain that control judgment and self-control. And that this thing, I guess, is not a virus, is transmitted by touch, which leads me to 3 follow-up questions. The first being, how does alcohol actually affect humans, which I think is probably the easiest one we can answer. The second one is, how could something like this be affected by touch, which I don't have a good answer for. And then the third one is, are they actually acting like humans affected by alcohol? Is that
no? Huge
right?
No. That's,
okay.
Yeah, this is where Sword Sulu comes in.
Right.
I mean, who among us hasn't gotten drunk and taken off our shirts and swung swords around? Really?
Well, I don't have a good answer to that because sure,
I do that without getting drunk.
Yeah, I do that.
Fair.
But yeah, so it's. A couple people do kind of act drunk. Wesley acts somewhat drunk. He's fairly cognizant, but he's just kind of like giddy. And he's like, I can help, I can do this, I can do that. But he still like takes over engineering. And so he acts kind of reasonably drunk. And there's a very stereotypical, they. In the 1960s, let's leave it at that. But they have an Irish character, and he sings like "We'll meet again, Kathleen," like over the intercom over and over again. And it's "I'll take you home again, Kathleen." And so he mostly like sings and writhes around, and I think we've seen enough humans that we can all agree that happens. But Sulu is just totally bonkers, out of his mind. Like he thinks that he's D'Artagnan. He I forget who he chases, but he like runs around and he's like, "Aha, Richelieu! I finally got you!" And I don't know what the perfect combination of alcohol and anything else would be, but he leaps about. He is, perfectly balanced. He's swinging his sword around with insane precision, and he just has he has a complete identity crisis. I have no way of thinking that would be a way that a human would end up acting while drunk, unless somebody convinced them that it would be really, really funny.
The only other thing I was going to say about that is just, it feels more like it's the Jekyll and Hyde virus than it does the drunk virus.
Yes.
Like, because I get people's inhibitions being diminished, but like, it was not. So I guess the next thing that I wanted to say, and this is the stuff that Jim, you can correct me when I butcher this. But I looked up how alcohol actually does what it does. And it was all very like I was studying a foreign planet, because I don't drink alcohol, and I was just like, oh, this is a thing theoretically that happens to people. So how does being drunk work? So alcohol is a depressant, and depressants act on the brain by increasing activity of what are called gamma aminobutyric acid. Maybe I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That sounded right to me, yeah.
Which is GABA, which I prefer.
Yo GABA GABA.
Yo GABA GABA. And that works by kind of slowing down your brain and making it harder for the areas of your brain that control balance, memory, speech, and judgment. And I thought, well, viruses make people tired too, right? And sometimes being tired is similar to being drunk. But
Mhm.
what I learned, and I just thought this was kind of interesting, because you can be drunk without being tired. And this is because, as best as I understand it, the chemical that makes you feel tired, which is melatonin, generally triggers GABA production. So GABA doesn't trigger melatonin production. So if you have something else that causes GABA production, you can have all the wacky depressant effects with none of the tired sleepiness. So hooray.
Hooray.
Wow. The only thing I looked up in my research of alcohol was I found out that the best drink in existence is the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster,
Heard that's like having your brain smashed out with a lemon.
wrapped around a large gold brick. Indeed.
Important distinction.
I actually went in a totally different direction, and I was looking for what are some viruses that maybe do make you act like you're drunk, and probably to the surprise of no one, there really isn't anything like that. But I did find a few really interesting things that could simulate some of the effects of being drunk, and I shouldn't laugh at this. It's not funny. Dehydration. If you have like very severe dehydration, which is not a virus, but I was trying to think, how can your body emulate? And I think that if I recall correctly, when they were talking about the polywater intoxication thing from Star Trek, they were like, "Oh yeah, and it can also dehydrate you." So I was like, "That's as much of a connection as I need." And if you get very dehydrated, you start to get a little bit loopy. You may not be able to remember what's going on around you. You might get disoriented. So that was one way. Viral encephalitis, which again, not funny. Don't know why I'm laughing. Just the idea of viral.
You're a bad person.
Yeah, well, just the idea of viral encephalitis being like, oh, I want to get drunk. Let's go get some viral encephalitis.
You should run an anti-alcohol campaign, like the stop smoking campaigns, but
yeah,
just make the greatest marketing push in history and rebrand alcohol as viral encephalitis or whatever it was.
Yeah. But the problem with that, of course, is that viral encephalitis can also cause brain damage and put you into a coma. So actually, that's not too far off from alcohol.
Fair.
Oh, and another thing that I thought was kind of interesting was the idea of one of the complaints of people that suffer from long COVID is this thing called brain fog, which makes it hard for you to remember things and like makes you not focused. You can lose concentration easily and stuff like that, which is something that if you were mildly drunk, your attention span kind of shortens up. So I thought that was kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I try to avoid thinking about COVID as much as possible. So we've already got the obligatory reference to hitchhikers out of the way. Thank you, Ryan.
Yes.
Does that have to be the only one?
No. It doesn't have to be. It's just there is one required.
Okay, yeah.
But to tackle the question, and this is a non-answer to the question, but how could such a virus be transmitted by touch? I don't know. I just can't think of a good reason. But I do know that Star Trek takes place in space, and space diseases don't have to follow rules. For example, in Red Dwarf, Dave Lister gets space pneumonia, which Rimmer hypothesized is actually 3 million year old mutated form of pneumonia. Although it is unclear if this is accurate. It's just his hypothesis. But the disease has a side effect of manifesting the person suffering from the disease's hallucinations into reality, which makes absolutely no sense. And by that logic, I feel like we can throw rules out the window.
Well, I was going to say there are some viruses that are spread by touch, and famously things like chickenpox. But the other thing is, and this is something that we've known for a very long time. You get something on your skin, and then you rub your eyes or stick your fingers in your mouth, and you're going to get sick. So that's also a possibility. But I mean, there are some especially a lot of the rashy kind of viruses, but those do get into your body. So. So I don't think that's too far beyond the realm of possibility. Maybe it infiltrates your sweat glands or something really gross like that.
I mean, that would explain Data's insistence on how his skin works.
Data does have pores.
He has pores. He is, Data is fully functional in every capacity.
He sure is. That is the thing that he said to Tasha Yar.
Yeah, they do establish that. I think this is where they establish that.
Yeah.
But then later on, they change their minds and shoot him up and things like that. So occasionally he is, occasionally he's normally human, and then sometimes he can get shot in the chest with an arrow and just be fine.
Yeah, depending on what the plot calls for.
Depending on what the plot needs, which, as any good sci-fi does.
If you're going to be interested in serialized science fiction or fantasy, you have to be aware that the rules are being made up as the series goes.
Oh, yes.
Like, that's... Forget about continuity. Mm-hmm. It's fine.
One of the interesting things that I saw that is not a virus, but it is a disease, was something called autobrewery syndrome. And I hear about this from time to time because every once in a while someone will it's big news whenever somebody has this because it's pretty rare. But basically there's like a condition where there are specific yeast that live in your digestive tract that for whatever reason, any carbohydrates or anything that's like bread or whatever that you eat, it ferments it into alcohol in your body. And a lot of people don't realize they have it, and then they go out and have dinner somewhere and they're driving drunk home because their body's turning it into alcohol, and they get pulled over and they're like, I haven't even drank anything. What are you talking about? And it turns out they have autobrewery syndrome. So
I've heard about that. I think I've heard about that in a TV show. Mm-hmm. So I assumed it was misrepresented, as most medical TV shows will do.
I don't think it's misrepresented, but it's very, very rare. There are not that many cases of this, and it's also not contagious as far as I know. But it is something that would make you seem drunk, and it is a disease. So,
wasn't that it? Just literally gets you drunk.
Yeah.
Right. You would seem drunk if you were drunk.
You would seem drunk. Yeah.
Unless you're just really good at hiding it. I guess some people are that.
If you're a really good actor.
That's true. Just like that.
Mm-hmm. Just like that's how you act. That's how acting works.
Hello, officer.
Ryan,
I'm not drunk at all.
I have been taking notes.
Listen, I haven't had a single thing to drink. You can tell that I'm being honest because I'm speaking in a British accent.
All right. Well, with that out of the way, hopefully I can make this. I told you the Ren Fair things pop into my head all the time. If the listeners are drunk, we'll be a lot funnier. So we do have a second question that we'd like to talk about, and this is also on the science fiction bent, I suppose. Is Iron Man a mech? And is Tony Stark a mech pilot? Now, before we get into this super heavily, I want to say that these two questions, while we've lumped them together, are actually very different. The answer to the second one, I would argue, is unequivocally yes, that Tony Stark is a mech pilot.
He's a mech pilot, okay.
He's piloted mechs, and that's it. That's as far as I go. But, I wanted to cite that some of the Iron Man suits are not just suits.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He has the two examples I'll bring up immediately in the comics. There are the Phoenix Force Buster and the Fin Fang Foom Buster. Are upwards of 20 stories tall.
Oh, so they're like Gundam sized.
So these are things that have happened, and because it's comic books, So, but is Iron Man the default suit?
Yeah.
Is that a mech?
I also wanted to add, since you're talking about suits he piloted that were mechs, I found something called the Iron Man Armor Mark 52 from Earth 12041, and that also just appeared to be like a mech, like a Gundam-sized mech. So
yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah,
when I was.
I don't know anything about all the Earths. Yeah. I know 616 is the comics, and that's all I know.
I don't like multiple Earth stories. Yeah. As soon as they start doing that, I'm out.
So I'm trying to in answering this question, I'm trying to figure out I think a lot of it has to do with size.
Okay.
But I do think a lot of it also has to do with the method in which you control the
Ooh.
mech. So
okay.
and I was saying this before we started, but I thought about this one a lot, and I have the ability, I found out, to hold a lengthy argument with myself about both sides. So I'm gonna equivocate this entire debate the entire time. So for the size part,
Okay.
so let's say no, Iron Man suit's not a mech, it's a suit. You know, it has to be big to be a mech or something like that. So picture Tony Stark in what you would consider like a typical mech,
Mm-hmm.
and then start to shrink the mech. And at what point in shrinking the mech,
Where's the line?
At what point in shrinking the mech does it change from mech to suit?
Right.
Like
Okay.
like Hulkbuster's pretty big.
Yeah.
Hulkbuster could, so like for me, when I think of mechs, I think of Mech Warrior 2. That is
yeah.
Mhm.
that was my favorite, one of my favorite games growing up, and like to me, I don't know a whole lot of mech lore. I think anime has a lot of it in it, but
Yeah.
for me, it's Mech Warrior 2. And those mechs, based on the size of the the cockpit, are not, some of them are about the size of Hulkbuster. Some of them might be
Okay.
a little bigger, but like, so size-wise, but would you say Hulkbuster's still a suit?
Mhm.
And then that brings up, okay, if is the other differentiation between a suit and a mech, that like a mech requires you to like drive it like a car, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like you push buttons and the fingers move or whatever,
Yeah.
versus having it on like a gauntlet. To which my other response to myself again would be, what if, like, how low do you shrink? Like, let's say you're in a traditional mech and it has fingers or whatever, but you're in like basically like the front seat of your car, but you have like tactile, what's the Nintendo glove?
Oh, the Power Glove.
The Power
Power
Glove.
Glove.
Like basically you're like, instead of
controls.
controlling like the hands, like with your hands in it, like what if you have power gloves,
Mhm.
and it's like a 1-to-1, you close your hands and the mech hands close. What's the difference between that and just a suit? Like what if you take out
'Cause
that
it's
part?
gonna move. I think I kind of did the same thing, because I don't have a yes or a no for this
Mhm.
question. I have a, it's just interesting to consider all points.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I looked at a couple different, like I looked at Final Fantasy VI as an example of a mech, and those are basically just chairs with legs that people sit in.
Mhm.
I also looked at something that it's interesting that you said it depends on how it is controlled, because I looked at several different things like power armor from Fallout,
okay.
the loader from Aliens.
Yeah.
Both of those, I would argue that the loader is power armor, but is power armor a separate category from mech? Like, I don't know that it is.
It's funny because I also was thinking of it as power armor, but I also think power armor is a separate category from mech.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And a lot of that, it comes from my experience with the Metroid franchise, because not only Samus in Metroid, but a lot of characters that show up at various points all have various kinds of spacesuits that have weapons attached to them, basically. So they're all sort of power armor. But I think that the thing that I thought was most interesting was that I just straight up read the Wikipedia article about like mecha.
Okay.
And they actually cited Iron Man specifically because they said that Iron Man wouldn't count as a mecha because it is human-sized and form-fitting. However, because of its substantially larger frame, and I don't know how it's piloted, but I assume in a slightly different way, they said that Ironmonger might be considered a mech.
Interesting. Ironmonger would be more on the level of like the Hulkbuster.
Yeah. I always thought of the Hulkbuster as kind of a mech too, because there's no way he's in there like moving his arms and it's like doing the thing. He's got to be piloting it.
But the other thing about the about like the method of piloting it is if I was to make the argument against Iron Man being a mech in like pretty much any form, I'd say with a mech, you can like sit in it and nothing happens, or like nothing happens until you hit the gas or whatever, and it's not it doesn't have its own like centralized brain basically, but let's say something happens to the pilot in a mech, and you like fall forward onto the throttle or whatever, your mech would like walk forward on its own, as if you like if you fell asleep at the wheel of a car, your car with your foot on the gas, like the car goes. But if you're in a suit, the suit does like if Iron Man like tries to scratch his head or something, it's the suit does all of that. And like if Iron Man were to be knocked unconscious inside his suit, the suit would collapse. I mean, unless Jarvis knows what to do. I guess now I'm gonna start the argument the other side. That's because of freaking Jarvis.
Yeah. Well, that's I can handle that one for you, because you're right. Wearing a suit, either if it's like a power enhancing suit or whatever, you would, like, if you fall over, it would fall over, except that we see multiple times that it can be controlled with like Tony Stark's voice commands or like remote programming.
The other thing I was going to mention on that same vein is that in the best Gundam, which is G Gundam,
yes,
they pilot the Gundams by wearing this form-fitting latex suit, and they're like standing inside of this cylindrical cockpit thing inside of the thing's chest, and they're just doing martial arts in there, and it translates to the Gundam. So, and that I would not consider that power armor by any stretch, but if you do knock someone unconscious in the Gundam's going to fall over.
That gets to Ryan's point of like, start shrinking that Gundam down. At what point?
Yeah.
And then I remember in my heated argument with myself about this, I don't remember what the context was, but at some point I was like, okay, if I'm wearing rollerblades, am I a car?
I like that.
So I think the point of that was like the opposite. Like, at what point do you have to grow from suit to be a mech, versus at what point like does the mech have to like shrinky dink around your body to become a suit?
I think once you get past once it stops being something where you move your arms and it is the method of moving your arms that controls it, once it starts being more like you're controlling the arms without like moving your arms.
But Iron Man, he can remote control all of his suits.
Yeah, his suits, I don't know why he even gets, by the end of the Avengers movies, I don't know why he bothers to get in the suit at all.
Yeah.
Because comics.
It'd be so much like I would sit in my mansion and say...
And just beep boop some drone suits.
Suit army, go get them.
So an interesting thing, this has nothing to do with the actual question, but while I was doing research into like all the Iron Man, different versions of Iron Man suit and stuff, there got to a point where I kind of forgot to even reference the movies. And it was like the first time in a very long time that I was just like reading about comics and forgot that there was a movie franchise.
I actually deliberately tried not to read about the movies because I was like, there's got to be a scenario in which Iron Man piloted a Gundam, and turns out there was.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, the other thing, which would be really cool, is if it was a mech, regardless of whether you used your arms and whatever, if any like mechanical suit type device could be considered a mech, then a lot of Comic-Con participants are literal mech drivers.
Whoa!
Because like, have you seen? I mean, I've seen Comic-Con cosplay folks in suits that are like 8 feet tall and like dressed up as like Megazord or whatever, and it's a lot of it has like Arduino processors and like things that do have some mechanical assistance in them. So I'm like, should we make the argument just on behalf of our cosplay friends that like, yes.
It is. So I have a new thesis. That that power armor is the midpoint between mech and puppet.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Mech and puppet?
Yeah.
Not,
because
like, where does suit come in?
Where does regular suit come in?
Well, power it blends from puppet into Well, I was thinking that a lot of those cosplay things are puppetry that they use to.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah, like
you go from tuxedo to power armor to Gundam. I don't know what's in between.
There is no. That's Power
now,
Rangers.
At what point?
Yeah, Sentai suit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's power armor though.
What's the midpoint between Gundam and Muppets?
Big Bird.
Big Bird. Obviously. Big Bird almost went to space. That was.
Yeah. But no, because doesn't he have to use like all kinds of monitors to like control where he's going because he can't see?
He has a monitor in there, but
he has something at I don't know if it's always been a monitor. If he has something at chest height, and then one hand is the beak / head, and then the other hand is his one good arm, and then his other arm is just kind of like dangly on fishing line, so that it kind of moves,
like counter levered or whatever.
Yeah.
So Jim, you said something a little bit ago that I want to touch on because I mentioned Power Rangers and you said that is power armor. Now I want to make the case that Power Rangers wear power enhancing suits, whereas Iron Man does not wear a power enhancing suit. He wears mechanized infantry capable armor, which is the definition of what a mech is.
Interesting. Yeah, because the Power Rangers suits, like the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the actors were wearing spandex or whatever that is, but like the lore was that it's like a titanium alloy.
Yeah.
It obviously gives them special. They were all martial artists to some extent. I don't remember about Billy. Because they were all martial artists and gymnasts and stuff, but like Billy just kind of.
Yeah, Billy was the token nerd in the group, and they just justified it by saying because he hung out with martial artists. He would,
I guess,
yes.
But yeah, so like that gives / enhances power for sure.
Although my counter argument to that is that Samus, I would say that her armor is more akin to Tony Stark's armor, and that is considered power armor.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think I would stand by the argument that power armor is not a separate category from mech.
So I guess I if I could just like sort of inject a personal definition, because there's not really a definition.
Oh, sure.
But I would say that power armor is something that you can control, that is like you move your arms and legs to do it, sort of, and then like a mech would be something you sit and you drive, like kind of like Ryan said at the beginning, I think. Like, and the thing is that kind of throws this into a bit of a tailspin is that there are some anime where the mechs are controlled like in G Gundam or what was the one that Gunsword? Gunsword is wild. I like Gunsword a lot, but I don't quite understand how the mechs work in that show. But
well, I know Pacific Rim is like that too.
Yeah. But I think it's more of like because you're sitting in there and you're driving it. Even if you're doing the motions with your body is not moving the pieces.
Right.
Your body is being translated. The movement is being translated by computers into the movement of the mech. Whereas like Iron Man or Samus, they're actually moving their body, and that's what lifts and lowers the arms and stuff like that.
There's also a difference to be made between mech, as we're thinking. Ryan mentioned Mech Warrior. I brought up the Final Fantasy VI thing, which are kind of like tanks with legs, which is this mechanized infantry, and then a lot of giant robots, which I don't know if this is a trademarked thing or not, but the other term mobile suit is used. Which is a trademark. That is a trademark. But I would say that's pretty descriptive of what
it's
the
a great
thing
descriptor.
is.
I call everything mobile suits.
Well, then at what point then does it get too big to be a mech? So what about an ATST from Star Wars? So like
I count that as a mech. I don't know.
What about Unicron? I mean, Unicron's a mech, right?
Yeah, but like, okay, so if an ATST is a mech, then is an AT-AT a mech?
Yeah.
I think they're all mechs.
Just mechs with like a zillions of people. So like one of the things is it has to walk.
It has to
or
walk.
Else it's a tank.
Or else it's a tank. Yep.
Yeah.
It's either a mech or a tank. Those are the two.
It's either a mech or
Because there is actually in Gundam, there is precedent for tanks that are treaded, and like there's one called the Gun Tank, and it's like a humanoid torso on tank treads.
Oh.
It sucks. It's the worst.
Can a mech fly? Because what about?
Many of them do.
But what if it only flies? So,
Ooh, okay.
For example,
Mhm.
I would suggest that 4 of the 5 Power Rangers drive their own little mechs, and then Kimberly flies around in a plane?
In a fighter jet.
It's a jet. Yeah, it would be a plane.
She doesn't get a mech, she gets a plane, but then joins the mechs.
Then Voltrons together into the
Voltrons
Megazord.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's just got a plane.
Yeah.
That's nice.
The other thing is I've been struggling to try to think of things that break this. And it's really weird because the mech anime category is so diverse. Because you have things like Gundam, which is extremely grounded, but then you have things like Gurren Lagann, which is extremely not.
Yeah.
But they're all still like piloted machines. Whether or not they can break the laws of physics, I guess, is irrelevant.
Okay, so the alien from Men in Black who has the galaxy on Orion's belt.
Archillion, yeah.
Yeah, the little guy wearing a human mech. If that human mech were to wear an Iron Man suit, what is he piloting?
I still say power armor. It's a mobile suit piloting power armor.
Yeah, but he's sitting in a chair that has like buttons and levers.
Well, that's what I was saying, is that the little alien is piloting a mobile suit piloting power armor. It's layers.
Oh.
It's like in Gundam, there is the there's a mobile armor. A mobile armor is like basically a battleship kind of thing, as opposed to like a mobile suit, which is humanoid. And this mobile suit docks with the mobile armor, and it's just a giant weapons platform at that point. And that's what you're looking at there, is the Archillian alien is docking with Iron Man to become a giant mobile weapons platform.
He's becoming like an Ultrazord.
Yes.
What about...
I feel bad. All the things I like, everything is through the lens of Gundam with me, because I've seen all of them.
I knew that was going to happen when we would Stein done for this one, Don.
What about Avatar? What about Blue Alien Avatar? The original one.
Okay. I was like, what does Aang have to do with it?
No, not Aang. But Blue Alien Avatar, I've only seen the first one, but like the guy has no function in his legs, and they plug him into the Matrix or something, and then he's got a mobile body that he controls with just his mind. So it's like 1-to-1 his brain. I don't remember if that...
I don't know if that would count as either. I think that'd be like a prosthetic body, like Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, yeah.
So there's another category. I think there
We're
needs to be a
adding to it.
taxonomy of pilotable bodies.
Yes,
I guess.
Well, the interesting thing about Ghost in the Shell is that there are also mechs in Ghost, because there's the Tachikomas, and then there's the I forget. I think
there's
it
a
was
mech
like
in Avatar. I think.
Is there?
Pretty sure.
Oh yeah, like the bad guy has some kind of like Fern Gully style mech.
Yeah.
And he walks around it. That's like classic mech. That's like Alien style.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, like I also don't remember if the avatars are supposed to be, I don't remember if they're like Data, like they're like positronic, fully functional blue people, but like, are they still at their core androids or robots, or are they like totally organic? They're like clones or something.
It's been too long since I saw that movie.
Yeah, I have no clue. What other humanoid robots can we add to this amazing spectrum?
Sure, there's just a million. I'm avoiding Googling it.
This isn't the same thing at all. Actually, Transformers is not a bad example, because they're sentient, and I would argue they're mechs, but they are not really in the same spirit of what we've been talking about, because they are not piloted at all, full stop.
Well, that was one of the things, by one definition, and I think we've already thrown this definition out the window, but one definition I saw of what a mech is that it's short for mechanized infantry unit, which is specifically a piloted machine. So I looked at like drones are not mechs, like it has to be a person in it.
I see.
But we've already talked about things that don't fit that criteria. So
does infantry by definition mean like for battle?
I guess it would.
What if I built a straight up like your most classic like the Mech Warrior mech, where you sit in like a cabin and hit the gas and the clutch and move it around, but instead of like battle, it was for like picking the oranges that are at the very, very top of the orange trees. And that's its only purpose. It was entirely docile and could not be used in any way for a war.
Well,
does it cease to be a mech?
I think the definition of mech has gotten away from where it originated.
Sure, gotten away from us.
Yeah, with that too, yeah.
We've gotten away from it. Thank you very much. I think in that case, because like the name of a thing, eventually the thing transcends the name, because the name is going to apply to why it was created. But we have things like we have decommissioned military technology in our everyday life now that is not used for battle. So again, so the definition doesn't help is the point.
Do we know what happens if, so like in Transformers, when they're cars, people go in them all the time?
I'm terrified of this question.
What happens? What happens if they transform when the person's in there? Does the person become a mech, or do they just become goo?
I just want to be honest with both of you. That is the reason I didn't watch Transformers when I was a kid.
You were afraid? Yeah, I was afraid that they would transform. Yep. That would be a great. I mean, I didn't watch it either. I'm very shallow on Transformers lore, but like, if I was a Decepticon and I was just like a swank, it's just like a swanky car, like I would go to car shows and just sit with my hood open.
That's why they're called Decepticons.
Exactly, but it's like they're always. I assume, again, very very unfamiliar with the lore, but like I assume they try to kill people a lot. I don't know what else their goal is, but like why like run around as big robots and fight the army when you can just like sit as like a Bugatti Veyron with your door open and like a car show or something, and then like when somebody gets in, like, ooh, so this is what that's like, you just go bloop, bloop.
I think so that's one. I likewise have very shallow Transformers lore, but what I do what I do know is that the Autobots tended to be more like service vehicles and the more commercial friendly, or I guess civilian friendly. And most Decepticons, most of the evil people were like tanks and fighter jets and like things that could. So I think a smart Decepticon might have that tactic. Might have
a good, decoy tactic, but the other ones can only get enlisted military that sign a lucrative contract.
And then Soundwave was a boombox, so like,
well, that one's gonna get you every time.
Yeah. That's the one I know by name. That and Optimus Prime are the two that I know by name.
What if a Decepticon? No, wait. What if a Transformer wears rollerblades? Is it a car?
It's still a car.
It's still a car.
Yeah, it's just a car with rollerblades.
Is it still a car when it's a Transformer style?
If it has rollerblades.
But like if it's like when Bumblebee or whatever transforms from car form into Bumblebee form, which is weirdly named because it's clearly a person. It's shaped like a person.
It's a person, yeah.
They should have called him Person.
He's not a Bumblebee.
He's not a Bumblebee. But yeah, when Bumblebee transforms,
that is misleading. Transformers.
Yeah. When he transforms, is he still a car?
I mean, no, because that's what. Well, I would say.
At what point, as he's standing, does he cease to be car?
I mean, if
if
a werewolf turns into a person, it is not currently a werewolf.
It is just aware.
It is aware of. We gotta end this episode.
If a werewolf pilots a Gundam.
If a werewolf pilots a Gundam
in the woods where no one can hear,
while being driven by aliens with Orion's belt on rollerblades.
Ryan, did you know that in G Gundam there is a horse that pilots a Gundam that is shaped like a horse?
That's the thing I know about G Gundam.
To be continued. Tune in next episode where we talk about horse mechs.
Where we just talk about that. Unpack that scene.
Horse mech throws the whole thing out the window.
You can all just delete this episode. At this point, everything is a mech.
Yeah.
Your toaster is a mech.
Horses are mechs.
Horses are mechs.
Mech horses are mechs.
Soylent Green is mechs.
I think I gotta ask, does anybody have anything they wanted to say on this topic before
I
we
have
wrap?
1,000 things to say on this
So
topic.
you're not allowed. think we gotta wrap up.
Yes, indeed.
All right, listeners, this week, let us know, should you pilot a mech drunk? Jim, do we have any listener mail this week?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet at vaguelysci. And this email comes to us from Tony and is in regards to episode 120, the various sogginess of your human body. And Tony writes, I have a weird plasticky or leathery chair or something, and every time I sit in it, it's cold, and I always think it's wet. Not very scientific, but pretty observational.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, I have that happen to me.
Yeah, I think it's basically exactly what we were talking about, where it's like sometimes like cold metal or like cold plastic, it just feels wet because we can't sense wetness. I don't know if you know that, Ryan. You can't sense wetness.
I've been thinking about that since we recorded that episode, and I think the question is a little unfair because it assumes that wetness is a thing on its own to be sensed, and we can determine if things are wet because of temperature, texture, and
yeah.
So I don't know.
I think that it is a thing you theoretically could sense because there's like an elasticity to water or like a I don't know. There are other things there that I think we are missing because we just sort of context clues our way to wetness.
Yeah, context cluesing your way to wetness since 2023.
Context clues your way to wetness.
Context cluesing. That was the hardest.
Yeah,
verb
it's not easy to say.
to conjugate.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out. And so does telling your friends.
And tell your friends to list. Yeah, I don't have a pithy thing.
Tell your friends to tell us how we're wrong about mechs.
I mean, yeah, I welcome them.
Yeah.
We've covered every possible wrong thing you could say about mechs.
Yeah.
So.
And we don't
Yeah.
even agree with us.
None of the correct things, only the wrong stuff.
Only the wrong stuff.
And we didn't even talk about Evangelion. Whew.
Yeah. Tony Stark piloted an Evangelion thing at one point, too.
Oh, what?
Yep.
What? No.
Yeah.
What? No.
Yep. Yeah.
What? I need you to say more about this.
It was one of the, what do you call them? The Eternals.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like he crossed over into
Or the
Evangelion
Celestials.
and like met
No,
Shinji.
it was they just did a thing much like they gave him a Gundam at one point.
Ah,
They gave him an
okay.
Evangelion thing. Comics are dumb.
I don't think Shinji and Tony Stark would get along too well.
I don't think anybody in Tony Stark would get along too well.
I don't think anyone in Shinji would get along too well. Anyway, our vaguely musical intro was composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. And don't forget, we have those new mouse pads and like the playing mats. Those are pretty cool, those neoprene thingies. I didn't know about that. I might have to get one because I think they're cool. And I keep buying my own merch.
Yep, somebody's gotta.
That's fair. But it might as well be you, listeners.
So thank you to Ryan for being our guest this week.
Is the Trojan horse a mech?
The
Is
Trojan.
it pilotable? I thought they had to roll it into place.
That was going to be like my soundbite to leave us on.
I got it.
Sorry.
Well, for Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Ryan.
And I hope you have the best day ever.
Mm-hmm. Toodaloo, everyone.
I don't feel so bad about the gunfight thing So it's the Outlaws were it was the Clanton gang. So like that kind of rings a bell.
Okay.
But it's Ike Clanton, Billy Clanton, Tom McLaury, Frank McLaury. One of the Clanton gang is Pete Spence. That's not memorable. I don't feel so bad about not knowing the Clanton gang because none of their names are very memorable.
I was thinking of Pat Garrett, and that's Billy the Kid. Which is
he's not. I was gonna say Billy the Kid. No, it's Frank Stillwell, Pony Deal, Pete Spence, Tom McLaury. No, they deserve to be forgotten.